Hello, this is Dr. Mears, and today we are going to be factoring trinomials when a equals 1. First, let's review a couple forms. We have standard form, which is ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are real numbers. And then we have intercept form. Intercept form is the quantity of x plus p times the quantity of x plus q. This is also going to be our factored form. So this is the form that we're looking to undo standard form to turn it into factored form. All right, let us begin. Number 1, x squared plus 7x plus 10. So we need to factor that. And now when I say a equals 1, this is really a 1 in front. So a is 1, b would be 7, and c would be 10. And so we are going to factor this trinomial when a is 1. I'm going to erase that because our 1s do like to disappear. Okay. First, we have to set up our parentheses because we want to get it into factored form. And we're going to look at this first term right here first. And so this first term, we are going to have to decide what we have to multiply to get to x squared, because this is a first term here and this is a first term here. And we know that x times x does get us to x squared. Okay, now we're going to look at our last term. Our last term is 10. And so we need to factor 10 so that we can find those two factors that multiply to give us 10. So let's do a little work on the side over here. So factors of 10. We have 1 times 10 and we have 2 times 5. Now we're not going to worry about being positive or negative yet because these are both positive. X squared plus 7x plus 10. So I'm not going to worry about positives and negatives yet. And a little tip, what I would do is I would first start with the ones that are closest together. So 2 and 5 are close together in the numbers and on the number line. 1 and 10 are farther apart than 2 and 5. So I would start with 2 and 5 first. We can always go to 1 and 10 after. Now, a lot of people like to use what's called the X method. So the X method is where we have to make sure that these last terms are going to multiply to this last term. So the last term, the two numbers that I'm going to put down, we're going to try 2 and 5. So I'm going to put these two numbers here and here. These two numbers have to multiply to get us to 10. So 2 times 5 is 10. Perfect. Okay. Now, here's the middle term. First, last, middle. And so these two numbers are going to have to add to the middle term. So 2 plus 5 is 7. Oh, look, it works. 2 plus 5 is 7. That's what we needed for the middle. 2 times 5 is 10. That's what we needed for the last. So these are both positive, and so how we're going to write it is x plus 2 and x plus 5. You could have these flipped. This could be the quantity x plus 5, and this could be the quantity x plus 2. So you could flip them around. I just wrote them like that, which is fine. Okay, let's try the second one. X squared minus 7x plus 10. So now here's where we're getting into positives and negatives. So I'm going to stick with using 2 and 5 because, again, we need factors of 10. So let's set up our parentheses. The first term has to multiply to give you the first term. X times x gives us x squared. And now we're looking at that last term. So that last term, we're going to need to multiply to get us 10. All right, let's try 2 and 5. However, 1 will have to be negative because we need to get to a negative 7. Oh, and I hope you're thinking, if we add both positive 2 and positive 5 is positive 7. Yeah, let's try negative 2 and negative 5. Okay, so the middle term they have to add. Negative 2 plus negative 5 is negative 7. So that checks out. Negative 2 times negative 5 is positive 10, and that checks out. So our factors are x minus 2 and x minus 5. So this negative 2 just turns into your x minus 2. And that negative 5 just turns it into x minus 5. All right, let's try number 3. Number 3, x squared plus 3x minus 10. See what I'm doing here? I think we're still going to use 2 and 5 here. All right, let's first set up our parentheses. X times x gets us x squared. We need to multiply to negative 10, multiply to that last term. We need to add to get to negative 3, add to get to negative 3. All right, let's try 2 and 5. 2 and 5. All right, so we have a negative 10. That means one of these, if we need to multiply, one and only one can be negative. Because remember, 2 negatives gives you a positive, 2 positives multiplied gives you a positive as well. And so because this is a positive 3x, let's make the lower number negative because this has to come out to be a positive. So I'm making the lower number between these two negative. So let's see if this works. And if it doesn't, that's okay. You can also use a calculator and do trial and error. Absolutely fine. I'm just giving you some tips and tricks to, hopefully help you out. All right, let's try this. Negative 2 plus 5 is a positive 3. Check. Negative 2 times 5 is a negative 10. Check. So it's going to be a minus 2 and a plus 5, and we're good. All right, let's change the signs again and see what happens now. All right, x squared minus 3x minus 10. Setting up our parentheses, x times x gets us back to x squared. And let's try 2 and 5. 2 and 5. We need to get the middle term to add. Remember, this is the middle term to add to negative 3. We need to get the last term to multiply to a negative 10. Because our middle term is negative, I think we should try to have the bigger number of 2 and 5 be negative. Because remember, only one can be negative because when we multiply them, we have to get to a negative 10. So only one of these could be negative. So because that middle term is negative, I'm going to put the negative on the 5. Let's see if it works. 2 plus negative 5 is negative 3. Check. 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Check. And so my factors are going to be a positive 2 and a negative 5. Awesome. Okay, so we really went through, I just wanted you to see the whole thing, on how our signs change for the middle and the last, and how our signs will change to be able to factor it out. So hopefully you have some ideas of some tricks or tips that you can use for yourself to remember which one's going to be negative and which one's going to be positive. Okay, let's move on with factoring. Number 5, 2x squared plus 14x plus 24. Now, I said our a right here is 2. So when I said we're factoring when a is 1. But I'm hoping that you're able to see we might have a greatest common factor to take out. So that should be the number one thing that you're looking for. The thing that you're looking for first is look for a greatest common factor to factor out. And here we can see that every single one of these terms can be divided by 2. So let's factor out that greatest common factor, 2. 2x squared divided by 2 is x squared. Positive 14x divided by 2 is positive 7x. Positive 24 divided by 2 is 12. Now, don't forget about that 2 because it still has to come with us. It is just linked by multiplication because we undid it by division. So it's linked by multiplication. And so when we write out our 2 parentheses, I would just say, make sure that 2 is in front. So now we can go and we can factor what's inside here. Just not forgetting about that 2. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that 2 anymore because we did factor it out. So let's just look at what's inside the parentheses. X times x gets us to x squared. And now we're going to have to find factors of our last term, which is 12. So factors of 12. Okay, we do have 1 and 12. We do have 2 and 6. 2 times 6 is 12. And we also have 3 times 4. Now, we have to think about this middle term here. These have to add to 7. So I'm going to cross this out because we don't need this right now. So our middle term has to, our last term is 12, multiply to our last term, and we have to add to 7. So if you look at these factors, which ones do you think we should start with? I'm going with 3 and 4 too. Also, which ones are closer together on the number line? That would be 3 and 4 are closer together than 2 and 6 and 1 and 12. Start with that one that's closer together. Again, another little trick. All right, so we're going to start with 3 and 4. We need to add to that middle term, which is 7. We need to multiply to that last term, which is 12. So let's see if this works. They're all positives, so like the first one, we don't have to worry about any negatives. So let's see if they add. So we have positive 3 plus positive 4 is 7. Check. Positive 3 times negative 4 is a positive 12. Check. So we're going to do plus 3 and plus 4. So our answer, not forgetting about our greatest common factor, is 2 times the quantity x plus 3 times the quantity x plus 4. Okay, let's try the next one, number 6. Y cubed minus 12y squared plus 32y. Okay, so when we were doing standard form, we had a square. It's okay that we have a y. It's absolutely fine that we change the variable, but we started with a square. Hopefully you're noticing our first step is looking for a greatest common factor. And all three of these terms, 1, 2, and 3, all have a y in it. So we can take out a greatest common factor of y, which would definitely going to help us get this in standard form. Okay, so this is the lowest exponent is y to the first. So we can factor out y. Y cubed divided by y is y squared. Negative 12y squared divided by y is negative 12y. Positive 32y divided by y is a positive 32. So there we go. Now we're in standard form where our exponent is squared here. Now we're going to be able to factor this. So let's bring down the y. Do not forget to drop that down. Setting up our parentheses. Y times y is y squared. So now here's our middle term. That's out. Here's our last term. And so we need factors of 32. Okay, let's try it. We have 1 times 32. We have 2 times 16. We have 4 times 8. Which ones are closest together on a number line if we're looking at a number line? You're right, 4 times 8. So let's try this first. And then I would always back it up. You can try that and then you can try that. But let's try the ones that are closer together. Okay. Here we have 4 and 8. All right, so we're going to have to multiply to get a positive number. Remember, we multiplied to the last term. We're going to have to add them to get to a negative number. So if this has to come out negative, this has to come out positive. You're right. Both of these, negative times a negative gives us a positive. Negative plus a negative gives us a negative. So let's try it out. Again, you can always use your calculator, absolutely fine. Negative 4 plus negative 8 gives us a negative 12. Check. Negative 4 times negative 8 gives us a positive 32. Check. So my factors are minus 4 and minus 8. And so this is our fully factored answer right here. All right, a couple more. So let's just recap. Number 1, we're looking for a greatest common factor. Okay. Number 7. Ooh, negative 6 plus x squared plus x. So let's remember standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c. And we always want to remember, number 1, we have to take out a greatest common factor. Okay, so in here, standard form. So do we have a greatest common factor? No, there's no common number and or term that we can factor out here. Okay. Number 2, we have to make sure that it's in standard form. So ax squared plus bx plus c. Or if you would like to think as the exponents are decreasing. So some people like to remember it like that. Exponents are decreasing, 2, 1, x to the 0. So let's look at number 7. We don't have a greatest common factor to take out. We don't have exponents decreasing. It's not in standard form. So let's just rearrange. And how I like to rearrange is I like to circle the sign to the left of the term. So -6, positive x squared, positive x. Now we can just rearrange these circles. So I can take this x squared circle and I can say, put it first because we need to get it first. Okay, so that's out. That circle's out. What other circle comes next, right? Positive x. So now I'm just bringing that down, out. What other circle? -6. And so this helps to take care of your positives and negatives so that you're not confusing them and putting them in the wrong spots. So now that we have it in standard form, decreasing exponents 2, 1, none, we can now factor. Parentheses, what x times x gives you x squared. We're now looking for factors of 6. So we have 1 and 6. We have 2 and 3. Start with the ones that are closer together, 2 and 3. We have to add to get to the middle. So we need to add to, this is a 1, remember? So we have to add to get to the middle. We have to multiply to get to that last term. The last term is a -6, and we have a adding to a +1. So one of these can only be negative because if we have to multiply to get to a negative number. This is positive, so that means that the lower number, 2, which is lower than 3, that's going to be, oops, I'm so sorry, everybody, don't mean to confuse you. That is going to be our negative, and our 3 is going to be positive. Let's try this out. -2 plus 3 is +1. -2 times 3 is -6. Now, if you did switch them, then it wouldn't have come out correctly. And then you would have been like, oh, it's just, I have to switch them back. And that's okay. Again, try it out. If it doesn't work, then you need to make some adjustments. So we know that this is going to be x minus 2 and x plus 3. There we go. Now, for these steps, you can interchange these. You don't always have to take out a greatest common factor first. You can definitely make sure that the exponents are decreasing. Sometimes I like to do that first. It doesn't matter. They're interchangeable. It's just things to keep in mind as you're going through and factoring these problems because they can go from basic to intermediate to advanced. So you have to have your toolbox ready. All right, number 8, 56x plus x squared plus x to the third. So you know what? I'm going to put the exponents in decreasing order. So I'm going to circle them. Okay, x to the third is going to be first. That's the largest exponent. Plus x squared, that's the next, plus 56x. Now that I have the exponents are in decreasing order, I can take out my greatest common factor because I see that all these terms have an x, so I can take out an x. Taking out an x, factoring out an x from x cubed gives you x squared plus x plus 56. Now I can set up my factored form, not forgetting about this greatest common factor out here, so I just brought it down. X times x gives you x squared, and now I'm looking for factors of 56. So multiplying to my last, so we have 1 and 56, and then we have 7 times 8. Let's start with the one that's closer together in numbers. So 7 and 8 is definitely closer than 1 and 56. 7 and 8. And let's see, so we have to multiply to the last, positive 56, looking good. And we have to add them to get to a positive 1. We have to add them to get to a positive 1. So middle, positive 1. All right, so let's see. I'm wondering if this is actually going to work. Because if we did 7 plus 8, we're going to get 15. That doesn't work, okay? If we do -7 plus -8, we're going to get to a -15. and that doesn't work. And let's just erase this. To get to a positive 1, just like this one back here, I'm thinking this is going to have to be a negative 7 and this is going to have to be a positive 8. That gets us to a positive 1. However, it gets us to a negative 56. And that we have a positive 56. So none of these combinations work. So I'm thinking it's not going to be any more factorable than it is right here. And so this is as factored as you can get this by just taking out that greatest common factor. And so that's it. This cannot be done further, cannot go further, cannot factor further. Okay. And number 9, so exponents are in decreasing order. We have x squared plus 12xy plus 27y squared. This could go either way. I'm going to keep it with the x squared first. All right. Do they have a greatest common factor? Nope, they don't have a greatest number that we can divide out, and they don't have a common variable. So this is just going to be factored as usual. X squared, x times x. We have to multiply to get to, and if this is confusing, it's okay. This y squared, it's just like we did x times x to get x squared. And if you just look like this, y, the last term, times y is going to get you y squared. And so it's okay that we have those two variables. And when we add them together, I'm going to show you in a moment how it's going to come out to 12xy. So let's focus on multiplying to 27, multiplying to the last term, which is 27, and adding to the middle term, which is 12, here and here. Do not worry about those variables because x times x is x squared, y times y is y squared. All right, factors of 27. 1 and 27, 9 and 3, and I think that's it. And so let's start with the ones that are closer together, 9 and 3. We see it's both positive, so that's great. So 9 plus 3 gives us 12. 9 times 3 gives us 27. So it's going to be plus 3y plus 9y. Okay, how do we get this 12xy? Let's say that we wanted to check to make sure that this was actually the factor of what our standard form was in the beginning. So to check, I'm going to use the FOIL method. I'm going to multiply the first x times x, which is x squared. I'm going to multiply the outer 9 times 9y is positive 9xy. Remember, this is all multiplication, so they all come together. All right, so that's first, that's outer. Inner, 3 plus 3xy, again, all multiplication, so we put them all together. And then our last terms, 3y times 9y, gives us a positive 27y squared. These are like terms, so I'm going to get x squared plus 12xy plus 27y squared. So we not only factored in two variables, we also multiplied to make sure this is exactly what I started with, and that's how you can check your answers for any one of these. So we did a lot. We factored trinomials where a is 1. We took out a greatest common factor. We even reordered in exponents decreasing, and we factored in two variables. I hope it helped.